going to get our learn on, guys, and if you guys can help me out, we're going to do an awesome teaching segment here on intrinsic and extrinsic value so that we can help you guys not freak out. Because some of you guys, man, y'all freak out a lot. Like, y'all freak out a lot. Like, they're like, oh my God, they're going to call my shares away. Oh my God, they're going to put these shares on me. Oh my God, like, y'all think that there's people on the other side with their phone ready at 1 o'clock in the morning to put these shares on you. And let me y'all remember when the Green Bay Packers lost like 2 or 3 games in a row and Aaron Rodgers goes on ESPN and he's like, relax. And they end up going to the Super Bowl that year and I think winning, you know what I mean? Like, just relax. Like, relax. It's going to be okay. It's a game of math. So what we're going to have to learn is we're going to have to get out of our emotions. There's no money over there. There's no money over there in your emotions. Go stuff them in the freaking closet. We're going to suppress everything. You save that shit for Dr. Phil. This isn't Dr. Phil right now. We're going to play a game of math. So we're going to see if we can pull up the portfolio here, and we're going to play a game of math. And I'm going to show y'all some sticky situations that if I didn't know how to manage these trades, I could potentially get into a situation to where I could panic, push some buttons, and it could ultimately cost a lot of money. So the first thing I want to show y'all is I want to show y'all a covered call that's in the money. So that is in phase. So in phase, I have these covered calls at 130, and in phase is currently trading at 133. Give us a thumbs up in the chat if we can all agree that that covered call is in the money. If you understand that that covered call is currently in the money, give me a thumbs up so that we're all speaking the same language here. And you guys on the panel, give me a thumbs up if you can agree. We can all agree that this covered call is in the money right now. Like, if the expiration happened today, I would have to make good on this contract and deliver these shares. Does that make sense? Everybody on the same page? Mm-hmm. So the one thing that you have to always be able to calculate whenever something goes in the money is you got to get out of your freaking feelings and you just got to play a game of math, and it's intrinsic value versus extrinsic value. That's it. That's the first thing that you need to look at, guys. So what we need to look at here is we got to look at the knowns. We're going to solve for X, right? So what's the knowns? The known is the covered call is 130. We know that the share price is 133.30, and we know that the option is going for $17.10. Those are the knowns. So from there, we need to be able to deduce the intrinsic value versus the extrinsic value. So all you do whenever it's in the money is you're going to take the current share price, or you're going to take the strike price, subtract it from the current share price, and that's going to give you your intrinsic value, the moneyness of the contract. So that's $3.30. And then you're going to take that coefficient and you're going to subtract it from $17.10. And if you guys can help me out with the math on that, for easy math, we're going to say it's about $14. I think it's like $13.80 or something like that. So it's about $14. That's your extrinsic value. So the reason that I'm not sweating this right here, even though it looks really, really bad on paper right now, is because the person on the other side, if they were absolutely hell-bent, they were headstrong on owning these shares right here, right now, they're going to sacrifice all of that extrinsic value of this contract just to take ownership of shares of Enphase right now. Enphase doesn't pay a dividend. Enphase could go to 120 tomorrow for all we know. Because last time I remember, was there net income negative for the quarter, Dallas? Because you follow Enphase. It was negative. So you got to follow your company and know like what's driving this share price movement right now. It's the contract in Finland. So we're betting on the come. It's the anticipation of rate cuts. So we're betting on a lot of things that have yet to actually come to fruition or materialize, if you will. So I'm just like, well, I'm just going to chill out because I still got about $14 of extrinsic value that says I could just chill out and do nothing and collect what? This theta decay. It's about 11 cents a day right now. But as we get closer to expiration date, which the expiration date is 8/16, this is going to escalate because these Greeks all have to push this delta to either -1, 1, or 0. depending on whether or not you have positive delta or negative delta, right? Depending on if it's a short position or a long position. We'll get into the weeds on another episode. But right now it's a 60 delta. So what does that mean? For every dollar in movement up or down, this option is going to go down by 60 cents. If it's a covered call, if it goes down $1, that helps us. If it goes up $1, we're in the hole another 60 cents. So that's what that delta means. And then from a probability standpoint, that's the percentage that we're going to potentially have those shares called away from us right now. So in a coin flip situation, we're losing 6 out of 10 times in that scenario. You need to be able to read that scoreboard. Give me a thumbs up if that's making a little sense for you guys so far. Because before I understood math, as far as options go, as soon as I was in the money, I would be rolling this shit like a year because I want to stay out of the money. And Dallas is nodding his head because he's probably made all these mistakes too. Luckily, he made them off camera. I was making these mistakes on camera, guys. I mean, all of this shit, if you roll the tape, dude, I have done all of this stupid shit live and in color, unfortunately.
Hey, TJ.
Better, you want to get better with your craft, and you got to do the math. It's like, I don't have to pay back any of this premium. This premium is mine to keep. I have to physically relinquish this premium if I want to take my ball and go home. If I want to close out this option because I don't want to deal with the pressure, then I got to give back 188 grand. The problem is I only collected about $65,000 total in this covered call campaign. So I'm in the hole about 120 grand or so from rolling, because I've had to roll this position 3 times already because it's really gotten away from me. So now I'm like, okay, well, I'm pretty close to my cost basis. My adjusted cost basis is like 108. So I'm kind of really on easy street right now. So I've decided for the next 2 weeks, I'm not even going to look at this position. Like, I'm not going to push any buttons in this position. If they want to call these shares away, fantastic. I'll just take that money and I'll start selling cash secured puts. Like, I've already decided that is the plan of attack, because it doesn't matter, because I only wanted 5,000 shares to begin with. So it would be an opportunity for me to scale the position back if the person on the other side wants to be very aggressive and have those shares right now whenever they have a contract to have them on 8/16. So I don't understand why they would want them now. So that's a covered call that is in the money. Now let's talk about a cash secured put that's
Hey, TJ, real quick, you kind of touched on your extrinsic value being around $14. I think it might be kind of important to explain just how much extrinsic value that is and why you're not worried. Because people, what you just said makes complete sense to me.
Sure.
But it might not make sense to somebody to say, hey, I have X amount of dollars in extrinsic value, and that's why I'm not worried about this right now, and that's why I'm going to sit on it. But like, why, if you're someone watching, why would they? I'm not sure they fully understand why they wouldn't be worried if they didn't want to get rid of the shares.
Sure. So I think what I need to do is I need to go back a little bit to how this problem started. So on May the 20th, I sold covered calls at 116 strike, and I collected 23,100. On May the 22nd, I saw that end phase was going crazy, and I rolled this position and I collected another 14,400 for going from a 116 strike to a 125 strike, and I added a month and a half to the contract. I went from a 531 strike to a 719 strike. So I added time to the contract. That's extrinsic value. Extrinsic value is defined by a couple of components. It's theta decay plus your implied volatility. Those are the components that make up your totality of the extrinsic value. So I added time to the contract, and they paid me money, net credit, for doing so. But make no mistake about it, I lost money on this trade here, but it still looks good on a net credit as long as I'm willing to wait out the contract. But then I feel like I was still getting caught with my hand in the cookie jar. And just yesterday, I was like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I want to kick this can down the road another month. And I went from a 125 strike to a 130 strike, and I collected an additional $26,000 in credit. So I collected 26, I collected 14, and I collected and I collected the initial 23, so about $65,000, give or take, in premium. So my thing is, I don't have to do anything because there's a lot of time on the clock. All of that premium is in my pocket right now. The premium from the rolls is hanging in the balance, and somebody has to make good on that premium if they want to close out those contracts to make these whole. That premium isn't just fairy dust. And I'm not going to pay for that premium. So guess who has to eat it? It's the person on the other side of the equation. So why would they want to eat all of that extrinsic value just to take ownership of those shares? Mathematically, they would have to be very, very low on the IQ scale to do so right now.
TJ, I'd like to point something out on that covered call.
Go ahead, because I know you're a lot better at the math and explaining than I am.
Can you actually open that covered call again?
1 second.
Because I think this is actually a pretty important thing to point out for a little bit of a teaching segment.
Sure. Let me go. Here we go. 1 second. Here we go. Which one do you want to open?
Yeah, right there. So because you rolled it, your net credit's probably different than that average credit of 1523.
Right. So I've gotten about 65,000, but collectively this thing's worth about 200,000 because of the losses that are rolled into this option.
But for the sake of this example, let's pretend that you didn't roll it and this was just the single covered call. So we said that the extrinsic value that's left in the contract is about 14, right?
Correct.
But the average credit on this was 15. So you collected over 15 of extrinsic value, and now there's only 14 left. So although you have a loss on the covered call, you're actually still in the driver's seat because there's less extrinsic value on it now than what you collected. So I think that's an important thing to note. Even though you have a loss on it, you're actually still better off than where you were when you sold it. So assuming that this was an individual and not part of a roll.
Yeah, really, really, really good point. I appreciate you pointing that out, Matt. But this is the way that it was explained to me in layman's terms. Whenever you're in a pickle with a contract, you always have to ask yourself, is it beneficial for the counterparty to own these shares right now? Or is it more beneficial for them to play a game called wait and see? Because what is the benefit of them taking ownership of those shares right now? And if you can't formulate a pretty good answer for that, then you're probably not at risk. When the risk comes into play, typically it's when there's an ex-dividend date at play, or there's a dividend, and that dividend that they're going to collect for owning those shares by a certain day is more than the extrinsic value that they're sacrificing for taking ownership of these shares prematurely via the contract, then that's when it becomes a game of gimmies and gotchas. That's when it becomes a game of cat and mouse. But because we're not dealing with a dividend paying stock, unless it's absolutely deep, deep, deep in the money, and this one isn't deep in the money, you just really don't run the risk. And I'm so ahead of this stock right now from the standpoint of I have time on my side. I might not have the ideal strike price, but I have about 40 days or so of time on my side. So if I can stay ahead of it that way, and if I can keep rolling out a month and a month and a month that way and keep going from like 130 to 133, 135, 140, even if end phase is at like 150 or 160 by that time, you can still stay out of harm's way. What I would like now is for Dallas to elaborate, because I know you've been managing a covered call for a while on a company called CrowdStrike, if I'm not mistaken.
I had a quick question just before we get to this. Like,
sure.
I see in the comments, people asking questions that I kind of have myself is, does the extrinsic that's left, does it change depending on the cost of the company? Like, let's say I have more experience with Palantir. So my own rule is if there's 20 cents or less of extrinsic value, then I'm kind of starting to look at rolling or closing the contract to avoid assignment. But does that change depending on, like, let's say NVIDIA, that's $1,000 a share. Is it 20 cents? Does that still apply? Or is it more of a percentage where it's like 10% of the option price, where it would go up and, you know, you're looking at 50 cents or $1 in extrinsic value, where you're at risk of assignment? Like,
It's a really good question. For me, my rule of thumb is 10%. If less than 10% of the options prices is extrinsic value, then I'm seriously considering rolling, because I have to look at the couple of dollars that I'm going to sacrifice. Is that worth the stress that I'm about to eliminate?
Okay.
Because I'm always looking for the path of least resistance, because I want to manage less so that I can make more. Like, I want to work less and make more. That's the American way, right? Like, I'm not trying to hypnotize the market and manage these positions over and over and over again, if that makes sense. Dallas, can you talk about your experience with CrowdStrike for people? Because I think they can really benefit from that.
Yeah, so 2 points I want to make first is because I know a lot of people use Robinhood, probably who are watching. And one newbie mistake I made a long time ago was whenever you are in fear of assignment and you decide you're going to go ahead and roll. Robinhood, and I'm not sure if it's only Robinhood, I switched to Schwab recently, and I haven't had any contracts I've had to roll yet on Schwab, so I'm not sure if they do the same thing. But basically, if you roll a contract, Robinhood is only going to show the current contract that you're in.
Correct.
So what I did when I was with Robinhood, I rolled something. It was a cash secure put, I believe, and I went ahead and rolled in order to avoid assignment. And then the next day, it was a big green day. So when I clicked on that option position, it showed I was up like 50%, a couple $1,000s. And I was like, sweet, I'm up now. I've been down all this time. So I went ahead and closed it. And then, I don't know, I was just thinking about it while driving. And I was like, wait a minute. That seems like too good to be true. I started running the numbers. You got to keep track of the credits and the debits.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, probably everyone has done that. So obviously the wheel tracker can do that. I just literally just have like a Google Doc of credits and debits. But I didn't
Dallas,
look
I have
at
an answer
credits.
for you.
Yeah.
If you're on Schwab and you use Thinkorswim, it rolls your previous losses on
Right.
from rolling
Okay. That's good.
into your cost basis.
That's great. That's great because I went ahead and closed it thinking I went up like $2,000. And in reality, I took like a $2,000 loss.
Right.
And I was very remorseful, obviously, once I figured that out. And I'm not, so that just sucked. So make sure you're keeping track of your credits and your debits. Just because your option shows that you're plus, that's the option that you've rolled. That's not like the combination of your old option and your new option. So definitely be careful of that. You have to keep track of your credits and debits. As far as extrinsic, this is something I've really been looking into because I understand the whole theory, and obviously like Tasty and like pretty much across the board, people would say like 10% or actually 10 cents of extrinsic.
Right.
And you know, once you get below that, then you're in a real danger zone. Obviously, in our private chat, we used to have, you know, there's been examples of, I remember Mr. Premium went like severely into the negative and still was not assigned. And from what I understand, after all my research, assignment is 100% random.
It is.
So, which doesn't make sense to me because it's not like, let's say I sell an option to TJ. It's not like TJ and I, which is what I think most people think. It's like, okay, well, that wouldn't be.
It's these computer algorithms that are trying to match open interest and volume all day long.
Yeah. So I'm thinking like, well, you know, this wouldn't be a good time for TJ to take these shares away. But it's like whatever the open interest is for that particular strike and date, it's all of those people. And if any of those people decide it's an advantageous time for them to call the shares away, the clearinghouse, the options clearinghouse, like randomly chooses the lucky winner or the not so lucky winner in that case and takes their shares. So that's what Google says, is that it's 100% random, which would say to me like, okay, so why does everyone say you're not in danger unless it's like under 10 cents? So I'm really still trying to figure all that out. I've definitely been assigned. I've never had shares called away, but I have been assigned. Like recently, Starbucks, like a month ago, I was assigned. And so I guess it is totally random. I guess maybe something in their algorithm makes it more likely for you to be assigned if there is less extrinsic. Obviously, it has to be in the money, or else it would really make no sense.
No, dude.
But
A few weeks ago, I got assigned 300 shares of SoFi at 7, and SoFi was at $7.07.
yeah,
And that had never happened to me in my going on 4 years now of selling puts and calls full time.
Is that is it? Wouldn't it have to dip below 7 for that to even be possible?
Bro, I have 150,000 and 300 shares because I got assigned 300 shares, and I'll show you. I just can't pull it up because then it gives the whole LLC action. But I'll screenshot you personally where it shows the price of SoFi at assignment, and it was like $7.07, and I was like, wait,
Huh.
what? And I was doing this action here, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is crazy. Like, I'm like, that has never happened to me before. So I mean, you learn. And remember that open door scenario when open door expired at the money? So at that point, it becomes the counterparty. Like, do they want the shares or do they not want the shares? Because that had never happened to me either, where it expired right at the number, right at the strike price. It's always like a penny less or a penny more, and you have that 30-minute window, right? And nothing happened. Open door stayed. I think it was like a 2 or 250. You remember that when that happened like 2 or 3 months ago? And I was like, well, this is a first. And you had some that were assigned, and I had some, like there was like 10 contracts, and like 6 of them yes, 4 of them no. So there's just like a lot of stuff that there's rules of thumb, but they're not set in stone, that's for sure. Do you have any experience with that, Matt, where stuff is just like you can't really like definitively say why it happened? You're just kind of like more speculating.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it sounds like you said, the person who actually gets assigned early might be random, but the actual instance of somebody getting assigned might not be as random. That might be like if it reaches a certain extrinsic value, then that means somebody's going to get assigned. And
Right.
then from there, whoever it is, that's the random part. But the fact that it's that much in the money is more of a objective thing. But I don't know. I've only been assigned early once, and that was on a Tesla cash secured put. That was like I sold like the 115 put, and it was at like 108. So it was like $17 in the money. I woke up with shares. I was like, oh, that's weird. I wasn't sure what the actual numbers were on the put, like extrinsic versus intrinsic, but that was my only experience. I'm not really sure how the voodoo works personally.
What I like to do is show a put that's in the money, and then we can kind of work from that. Another thing I want to show you is Riot was crazy today, bro. Like Riot, they had the whole short thing, so I went nuts with it, and I sold 100 cash secured puts over here and collected 4,600, and then what about I have to show more? Riot, did y'all follow Riot at all or no? Did
Yeah, it
this
tanked and went back up again.
Yeah, it tanked. So I took advantage right here. Picked up 5,000 at 909. Immediately sold covered calls because that's what I do. I highly don't recommend doing this, guys. This doesn't even work for me, but I do it. Like, do you have like a bad habit that you know is bad, but you do it
Yep.
anyway? This is my bad habit. It's called the buy right strategy. And it's really a buy wrong strategy because it doesn't work out for me. But essentially, what I do is I buy the shares and I sell the covered call immediately because I use that 22 cents as my rebate. So I'm like, oh, I really got him at like whatever it is, 890 or whatever it ends up being in my mind, right? In my twisted little mind, that's what's going on, just so y'all know. But it always like rarely works out. But then I'm using the Ben Pearl approach. I'm actually considering being okay with letting those shares get called away because I've done the math on it, and I'm like, I'd make like $6,000 in like 7 days.
Pretty good.
And I'm like, if I'd have gone into that trade and you would have told me that was going to happen, where do I sign? You know what I'm saying? I would have given you the pretty signature with the parentheses, comma TJ, the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I might be in that predicament where I'm like, I don't have to do shit. Let Riot do its thing. I don't know that I really wanted 25,000 shares anyway. You know what I'm saying? I just kind of wanted to buy the dip. But I'm like, I'll just let those damn shares get called away, and it's one less position to manage and call it good. But let me show y'all a cash secured put that is in the money, and we can see the intrinsic value versus the extrinsic value pretty quickly. So if I could find one, here we go. Here's Tesla. So I've got Tesla. It's a good example right here, guys. I knew I'd have one, man, because I got a lot of positions open. This one's for 621. So there's not a lot of time left on the clock. And I think that we can agree that that's pretty in the money. Can we all agree on that? 20 bucks.
Yes, sir.
So there's only $1 left of extrinsic value, and I still don't own those shares. Give me a thumbs up.
$1 is a lot, though. Like Bill was saying, like $1 is a lot.
If this was you in the chat, I'd be freaking out. And I don't even look at that position. Like, I mean, I had to look for it for y'all guys. I mean, it's like I don't even look at it because I already know the freaking game, dude. It's not very likely to happen. Tesla's not a dividend paying stock. The freaking vote is on June the 13th. I mean, shit. Tesla could be at 105 or it could be at 205. Which leads me to another thing. I got this from Dallas, so I'm not this smart. I stole this from Dallas. So I'm going to give him credit before I pawn it off as my own. So whenever there's a binary event like that, that's the terminology that Dallas used on his channel, so he knows that I watch his channel. I have covered calls that are doing very, very well to the tune of 89% on Tesla. I need to wake up tomorrow and take the win on this position, because this shit could get really, really ugly for me very, very quickly if something were to leak that says Elon got his pay package, because this 195 would be in trouble very, very quickly, and it's going to happen after hours. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be like, I went from positive 89% to negative 89%, and that shit has happened to me before with Enphase. Like, I literally needed to close out all 110 positions for 110 bucks. And I was at the cancer center. Remember, Bill? I was messaging you. I think it was Dallas. I was at the cancer center with my mom. I went in there to do the chemo. I came back and I'm like, what the hell? They want like $50,000 now because Enphase just went up like $15 in the last hour. And I'm like, dude, there was a rolling nightmare with Enphase. So, I mean, see profit, take profit is the moral of that story. So I'm gonna profit, take profit on that covered call. But back to the teaching segment on the cash secured put. Been in this trade for a while, rolled it a few times, but now it's gotten to the point to where I'm like, I'm kind of okay owning these shares because I already got 2,500 of them at right around the same price. So what's another 500? And I'll just sell covered calls at 195, and it is what it is, because $20 on Tesla is not really that big of a deal as far as being in the whole 20 bucks. So hopefully that helps you guys out on intrinsic and extrinsic value. What do you want to add on that, Bill? How long did it take you to not freak out anymore on this kind of stuff? Because I'd say whenever you want to be a wheeler, this is probably the hardest thing to overcome, is overlooking at your positions, A, and B, over managing your positions. Because the real strategy, by definition, selling puts and calls, guys, it's meant to be the Ben Pearl approach. It's meant to be a set it and forget it strategy. You're supposed to pick a strike price that you're good with either way. Whatever happens, you're good with it. But how many of you guys are looking at this damn phone way more than you probably should? Because early on in my career, I would do that. And the only thing that would happen is my battery would go dead by the end of the day. That's the only thing that would happen. I wasn't making any more money. And now I'm able to live life because I'm picking strike prices that I'm comfortable with on companies that I'm comfortable with. That's the recipe for success, guys. Pick a strike price that you're comfortable with on a company that you're comfortable with, because it's kind of like at that point, it's like I hold and hope. Bill, when's the last time you looked at your 401k? Exactly. You have to think about it. Dallas, you got a 401k at work. You ain't looking at that shit every day unless you're selling options in it. You know what I'm saying? Like it is, if it's a long-term investment, you don't look at it. You
I
don't
don't
look
think I've ever looked at mine from my new job. Yeah.
it just you don't do it. You know what I'm saying? So don't overmanage these positions because you're likely to get yourself in a situation. The only thing that I'm looking at on a daily basis, guys, is where's my next cash grab coming from, right? What's because I have this cash that I could deploy right now to go yield me more cash. That's what I'm looking at. But that position that I have on Palantir or Riot or whatever the case may be, the only thing I'm looking at is my percentages. Like, is it time for me to close for a profit? That's it. And then whenever they're really deep in the money, then I start looking at intrinsic and extrinsic value. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and finish it up. Bill, give us a couple of minutes of some closing wisdom, and we'll go around the horn and call it good. Because I'm surprised my wife hasn't come in here and yelled at me.